Yes.
All right.
In my gal.
Stand for.
Oh, sorry. It's not
I'm not ready yet.
this.
And it start.
We're gonna wait till,
This is the backup, so it's not on.
Just heads up.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Keep the order a little different. We don't have the topics on the floor. Is that what how we normally do?
It used to be last month when I tried to do the minutes before that topics were the floor.
Okay, well,
So you're right.
let's switch it back. Any topics, somebody wants to bring to this plan commission that's not on the agenda? All right, we'll hear that anyway. All right, did anybody have any issues with the draft minutes from last meeting's? Meeting, or have a motion to accept?
I'll make that motion that we accept them.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Staying, I wasn't here.
Okay. Time is now 7:02 p.m. The public hearing is now open. This is a quasi judicial land use hearing. The subject of this hearing is a request for a variance. The subject property is identified on the county assessor's map as lot 3600 on map 4N1W4BA. The applicant is St. Helens or LLC. The owner is St. Helens 2 LLC. Because quasi-judicial proceedings require the observance of certain procedural formalities, we will take a few moments to cover some preliminary matters and required statements. Does any member of the commission wish to declare an ex parte conflict of interest or bias in this matter? Seeing none, does anyone from the audience object to the ability of the commissioner to make a fair decision? The order of proceedings will be as follows: required statements, staff report, applicant's presentation, those in favor of the application, neutral testimony, those opposed, rebuttal by applicant, final questions, close of the record, deliberations and decisions. Why not do all of those? Following statements are required to be made at the commencement of the hearing pursuant to the city code at ORS 197.7635. The following is a list of the applicable substantive criteria for this decision. St. Helens Municipal Code 17.108.050, variance criteria for approval 1A through E. St. Helens Municipal Code 17.88.135, sign adjustments. All testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards the applicable substantive criteria as described, or other criteria in the plan, such as the comprehensive plan or land use regulation, such as that found in the development code, which the person believes applies to the decision. Failure to raise an issue, including constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval in this hearing in person or in writing. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the approving authority an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to LUBA, the Land Use Board of Appeals, on that issue, and precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Staff.
Great, thanks, Mr. Chairman. So today we're looking at a sign adjustment, also called a sign variance. It's not often that you look at these, so we'll kind of go through each criteria a little bit more than we would otherwise. The subject property is part of a 4-lot commercial subdivision, which you should all remember near Howard, US 30 and Commons, Columbia Commons, the main driveway. So I have a site plan here showing the subject property. So it's lot 4, the southernmost lot of that 4-lot subdivision. And Jacob issued an SDR for Burger King on this lot in April of 2022. So on this site plan, just for orientation, this is Howard Street to the south of the property, and then this is US 30. So the applicant is representing Burger King, and they're requesting this sign variance because of a easement which encumbers this property. So this easement is located right about here on the corner of Howard Street and US 30.
Jenny, I'm sorry, can we? That one?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Thank you, Patrick.
well, we'll see if I can reach.
Shall we help you?
But hey, you're probably, you're one tall.
You're easily, yeah. It actually comes away from the wall too, yeah.
There you go.
Thank you, yes,
Hey.
yes.
Good call.
You can see this up here.
Yes, we can see it.
You saved me from embarrassment if I would leave.
It's my pleasure.
Would you mind going to the next drawing, because it shows that, is
Yeah.
that correct? Just
Yeah,
wanna
so this is a
verify
little
that.
bit of a different orientation. This is showing the whole commercial subdivision property. The actual lot that we're dealing with is just at the very southern tip of that commercial subdivision. And the easement is at the very edge right here.
That little orange,
Yep, exactly.
one of the clarification, thank you.
Yeah, so this easement was established in 2003. And the benefiting party of that easement is the abutting property owner. So the owner of Columbia Commons that's already built out. And there's a very similar easement on the north end of the property, which actually has a sign already constructed. And there's a photo of that in the staff report. For orientation, I'll scroll to it just so you can
That's
kind
a
of
Columbia easement.
visualize it.
Yeah,
Yeah, so here's the other ground mounted sign that's constructed in the northernmost easement, just for reference. So in order to kind of digest what this variance is for, you need to know a little bit about different sign types. So our sign code has what's called freestanding signs, and that's any sign that's not associated with a building. Within the category of freestanding signs, there's multiple sign types. So there's pole signs, ground mounted signs, which I just showed you, and is mostly the subject of this variance. So the reason that Burger King is here tonight is not for a variance to build their pole sign, which advertises Burger King. The reason is for a future sign, which may go in that easement. And so the code requirements about freestanding signs limit the property to one freestanding sign per frontage. And there's different, I'm sorry, I'm gonna read the specific code citation because there's a couple that apply. So we'll start earlier on the staff report. So the two sign codes that apply are ground mounted signs and freestanding signs. So our code talks about how for principal uses, one double face ground mounted sign is allowed along each primary frontage. And when that use has multiple street frontages, a sign can be permitted on each frontage. Unfortunately, that category only applies to arterial or collector streets. So US 30 is an arterial street, but Howard Street is not a collector street. And so they are not afforded that stipulation that allows multiple freestanding signs. So that doesn't quite apply. The other section talks about allowing multiple freestanding signs if there's an approved comprehensive sign plan. And that's only allowed when there's a multi-tenant project, like you have a commercial complex with multiple frontages. So that's not also applicable in this case. So all of that to say, they're allowed one freestanding sign. And Burger King wants to play nice, as Jacob would say, with Columbia Commons and make sure that their freestanding pole sign doesn't prohibit Columbia Commons from being able to build a ground mounted sign within the already established easement. So that's the main goal of this variance. It's to allow a sign in the future in that easement that's already established. So looking at our criteria, similar to conditional use permit criteria where there's separate conditions for separate uses. Our sign also, or our code also has additional variance criteria for just signs. So we don't use these a lot, so I'm gonna go through them. There's three main criteria that are applicable for sign adjustments. So it's A, B, and C here. So the first talks about how you should replace zoning district with any term that references sign districts. So I did that in the next section for the variance criteria, and you'll see that in red later. So the second criteria talks about how the sign adjustment can't be a result of any actions of the applicant, owner, previous owner, or circumstances of the applicant, owner, or previous owner, such as physical condition, age, or financial situation. And so I said in the staff report that the sign easement was established in 2003. There were different LLCs involved at the time. So the applicant and the current owner of the property are not related. So that's what I think the commission could find here. And I also talk about how there's a similar ground mounted sign in the north end of that property. So for C, it talks about how approval of the adjustment should not adversely affect the function or appearance of the development, and that the sign adjustment should not impose limitations on other properties, including signage that would be allowed on other adjacent properties. And so what I talk about in the report under C is that approving this variance is actually reducing a limitation on the adjacent property, not prohibiting the adjacent property from building additional signs. And so I think the commission could easily find that this is not causing adverse impacts by approving this variance for the abutting property owner. In fact, it does the opposite.
You explain how it does the opposite.
So if this sign variance weren't approved, the abutting property owner wouldn't be able to use that easement. They're only allowed one freestanding sign. So
You know about that easement, okay.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so if Burger King applies for a freestanding pole sign in the near future, which is very likely, the abutting property owner couldn't use their easement. It would be useless. So this variance is making sure that that is still usable. So then the report goes into the rest of the criteria for variances. We've seen these many times. There's some similarities between the sign adjustment criteria and the variance criteria. So for example, the one we just talked about talks about how approving the variance shouldn't be detrimental to similar properties in the same area. And I think that the commission could find that this is actually reducing a detrimental impact to an abutting property owner. And B, the commission could find that there's a special circumstance that only applies to this lot because we don't often see sign easements like this. Sign easements it's a unique circumstance that's only applicable to this lot. So I think the commission could easily find that. For C, this isn't a use variance, we know that. And then it also requires that the commission find that the standards are being maintained to the greatest extent that's reasonably possible. So what I talk about here is that there are other rules in our sign code that allow multiple freestanding signs on properties. It's just that they're not applicable to this specific property. So for example, if you have multiple frontages that are higher classified streets, like arterials, collectors, you're allowed multiple freestanding signs. In this case, you only have Highway 30 that's eligible for that. There's also a stipulation in our code that allows churches and schools to have multiple freestanding signs, also not applicable to this property, but I think it helps the commission make that finding that the standards are being maintained to the greatest extent possible because they are allowed in other zones or in other areas. For D, I think that's a very easy one. There's no physical or natural systems that will be adversely affected if this property had 2 signs on it. And then E is very similar to think it was B, that talks about actions of previous property owners. So I think the commission can also make that finding for E. So there's a couple of recommended conditions of approval. Staff does recommend approval is, number one, we added an additional description about timeline so that future staff can implement this. So it talks about that the, so I'll read it. The sign easement may only be used for the second sign if the proposed sign of the easement is established within the validity period of this variance. So what that means is as long as Burger King builds their freestanding pole sign within the validity period of this variance, which is 1 year, then the easement could be used to build its second freestanding sign. So that vests that ability.
They can build the sign,
It
or
would-
will it be the next two businesses can build a sign?
It would be the benefiting party of the easement that would build the sign in the easement. So that's the abutting property owner.
That's what
Columbia
I'm
Commons.
saying.
Yeah,
So it could just work its way down.
yeah, I mean, I don't know what their time frame is.
No, I
for
don't
constructing.
either, but I just didn't want one sign maybe, and so the next guy couldn't.
Oh, I see. Yeah, no,
You
it'll
know.
be, so,
First person here gets the dirt.
yeah, so each property within the 4-lot subdivision will be able to have a sign on it. The
Yeah.
problem is that this is one lot that has an easement and they want the second sign.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
So condition 2, any sign still requires a sign permit. So this variant isn't a substitute for a sign permit. So they still have to apply for a sign permit and meet all the other criteria that are, mostly about square footage, location, vision clearance, like all the other criteria that a sign permit goes through. 3, this variance is only valid as long as the existing sign easement's in place. So if that sign easement's extinguished or removed, that means this variance is null and void. I think that makes sense. And then 4 is our catch-all condition that just owners and applicants are still responsible for following the development code.
But I had a similar question to hers, but so the adjacent property owner is the property to the west.
This, yeah, it's,
It's outside of this four
Opposite
lot.
side is US 30.
yeah, in this little map here. This one,
Yeah.
like the DMV.
Make sure. And they're the only ones that have the easement available for them,
Yes,
that second sign.
yes.
Yeah,
Other adjacent property owners don't have that.
That's right. Yeah, it's not an easement for anybody. It's specific to them.
specific, them is who?
Columbia Commons,
So the Columbia Commons owns the property. And you have the arrow on, and they're the ones that have these.
Columbia Commons is not the owner of our subject property tonight.
Right. They own the easement.
Correct.
So just for clarity, will the variance allow Burger King to build another sign?
No,
And is there a reason why Columbia Commons isn't here requesting the variance if it's for their benefit?
and that's a good question for the applicant, which is here tonight.
Is there anybody else who may be able to build a sign if we allow for this extra sign? Is there anybody other than Columbia Commons that would potentially be able to build a sign?
No,
Well, you're talking probably 4 signs anyway, 'cause you got Dairy Queen and then.
Those are, you want separate lots.
No,
They'll get
I
different lots.
understand that, but
This
they can.
this sign
with
adjustment.
this variance, it'll give them the opportunity to.
This sign adjustment is specific to this property and this
Right.
easement, and that easement is specific to that property owner.
So-
another variance would be required for anybody else.
Yeah, so the upswing of that is if you look to the northeast, the same problem when we get there.
Yes.
They built that. There's already a freestanding sign there. So if that property owner wants to put up anything, they're gonna get a variance. We already talked about that before.
Yeah, we talked about it in the subdivision, because we're like, oh, wow, this is gonna be something, and, you know, when that property develops, that'll be another thing, but Burger King's the first one in line. So,
The rest of them are gonna have someone on the sidewalk with a
Well, you
sign.
know. So we'll put a 15 effort.
Wanna open it up to the applicant?
If you have any other questions to staff, we can ask them later. This is a good time for the applicant to come up and presentation if you have one.
Evening. My name is Andrew Johnson. I'm a project manager at Insight Real Estate. I'm here representing Burger King, specifically our franchisee, Ayaz Virgin, who manages other Burger King stores around the Portland metropolitan area.
Welcome to St. Helens.
Thank you
Yes.
very much.
Thank you.
Beautiful town, to be
Yeah, I
honest.
really like the Halloween decorations.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for investing in our city.
So as Ms. Dimshaw pointed out, we're applying for a pole sign in the near future for our Burger King property, very similar to other signs that will likely be applied for the rest of the commercial properties on this overall subdivision, which was previously approved this year. The easement in question, shown in orange on the screen, has been in place for nearly 20 years now, and the adjacent owner has not acted on that sign since then. He has constructed the one on the northern portion of the site, but he has not acted on the one that encumbers our specific property in question tonight. We're trying to play nice in the sandbox. In other words, we intend to submit an application for a sign permit. To my knowledge, we don't anticipate any difficulty in obtaining that. We're just trying to allow the adjacent property owner, Columbia Commons, the right to construct a sign within their easement after we go ahead and construct our Burger King sign. We understand that there are other examples of properties with multiple signs. I know Howard Street doesn't quite meet the example of an arterial roadway, which would classify it as one of the frontages that allows us the multiple pole signs or multiple freestanding signs as the code reads. But that's in a nutshell what we're applying for, is to just play nice in the sandbox and allow Columbia Commons the future right to construct a sign within their easement that's been there for nearly 20 years.
Jacob is rubbing off on you with the sandbox.
We had a routine dialogue recently.
You're gonna get a little plastic tail with in trouble.
I have some questions if other people don't.
Go for it.
So you don't need this variance in order to build your sign, correct?
That's correct. That's my understanding from my conversations with the planning department.
Have you talked to the Commons people? Have they indicated some kind of action they may take if you try to build the sign or anything like that?
They have not. We've spoke to them about potentially receiving a driveway access off of their portion of Howard Street. And it was a difficult conversation, one, to even start, and two, to continue on with. And so we've had difficulty coordinating with that adjacent property owner to date. Now, that said, they are notified by attending this public, or by having this public hearing. All adjacent property owners have been notified of our intent to have this variance. So the adjacent property owner has been notified, but we're not aware of any intent to construct a sign within that easement.
And so hypothetically, let's say Columbia Commons hears about the Burger King coming and they know you want to build a sign, which I'm sure is gonna be a pole sign that has a lit up Burger King sign so that folks driving by the highway are gonna know where to buy the Whopper and all the other good stuff you guys sell. They run out and they quickly erect something in that easement. What do you think the effect of that may be?
The effect of that would be, well, is this hypothetically assuming that you don't approve the variance tonight?
Right, if we don't approve the variance, let's say you say, no, we don't want too many signs, because one of the things I'm thinking about is we don't necessarily want a lot of signs out there, and the Commons already has their sign, and I'm not sure where they would put another sign. And so, but I am worried about trouble in the neighborhood or trouble in the sandbox, as you say, that Burger King, they know that Burger King wants to build a sign, so they erect something, and now they say, oh, sorry, 2 signs in the easement already. And so are you thinking that, I don't know if there will be that kind of problem, but are you anticipating potentially that kind of issue?
That's part of the reason we're here tonight is that we want to avoid that issue. Furthermore, it's my understanding that the Columbia Commons would have to apply for a sign permit very similar to the one that we would have to apply for. They can't just go out and erect a sign willy-nilly. And so
Only Columbia Commons, because this is more of a question for staff. I don't have any other questions right now that I can think of for the applicant.
What year was that?
Well, I have questions for staff, but I don't have questions for the applicant. I could ask questions to staff right now.
Does anyone else have questions of the applicant?
So you anticipate putting up your sign within the next year?
You didn't buy this property from the Columbia Commons folks, you bought it from somebody else.
the property owner.
Planning on a sign facing the highway on the building.
The building will have its own signage, yes.
Highway
And they're
sign.
allowed to.
Now, that's the skinny portion of the building, so that won't have a substantial sign, I don't believe.
I do have another question, staff, before the applicant is completed. Is there any other aspect to this variance other than the addition of a sign, the allowance of potentially an addition of a sign? That's it. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of that? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Howard was always just the back door into that building.
I do have some additional.
Do we have any testimony in support of the application? Yeah, or in opposition? All right, so we need to do rebuttal then. The commission have any final questions, staff or the applicant? You have something?
Thank you, Dan. How long ago was the Columbia Commons development built?
Oh, yikes. I mean, it goes back to the 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, one of the original hospitals. We don't have a lot of files on it because of the age, so it's been around a long time.
How long has the sign been there? The sign that it already exists approximately?
Columbia Commons.
Estimate.
Not real long.
Lived here the longest.
Right about the same time that they filled the wetland.
Oh, okay, so it was in the early 2000s?
This easement was 2003, so it could have been.
I mean, they were doing a lot of things in the early 2000s, moving property lines, dividing, filling the wetland. And so it wouldn't surprise me, given the amount of stuff going on at the time. But that's not something I personally researched.
About 2003.
Is there any way in granting this variance that we can add a condition that Columbia Commons would need to apply, having had their sign for as long as they have? And since this is a action we may be taking for everyone playing nice in the sandbox, right? Burger King is a big company and they're making a serious investment. And I'd like to think everybody's gonna get along, but Burger King is hoping that they don't run into unnecessary hurdles of others applying for sign permits at the same time they are, and we have now people competing for signs. Is there a way, since Burger King has come forward and Columbia Commons has been, they haven't tried to build another sign in all the years they've been there, that we can make an additional condition of the variance that we will allow for 2 signs, but if and when the Commons, they must apply within a certain time frame, and then they must also establish that whatever sign they want to erect will we will hold a hearing and make sure it will not adversely affect the neighborhood and everything else under 17.88.135C.
We have had examples where the commission has made a decision for a normally subsequent administrative action to go before you. So that would be possible. And then as far as placing a time frame, I think that would be possible too. I know in my discussions with the applicant, in the context of playing nice in the sandbox, that was probably something they were trying to avoid. And that's why the conditions are structured the way they are. However, you certainly have the ability to disagree with that.
Well, I'm just making sure that we've got a nice, very nice monument sign for Columbia Commons, and then we're gonna have a nice Burger King sign. I do think that if we're gonna add an additional sign, we probably should know where it's gonna go and what it's gonna look like before we just allow a variance, or is there another procedure we're gonna go through?
Well, any new permanent sign needs a sign permit. And so that's a process. So you could say that any sign permit within that easement, so you know the location.
Yeah, that's the
Right.
question.
That's clear. And the location has its limitations, especially because it's in a vision clearance area. And so that's gonna affect that sign. But you could ask that or condition that any sign permit within that easement go before the planning commission. And that's easy. The code allows us to bump any administrative action to the commission if we feel necessary, and you've seen that happen occasionally. And so it's just one step above that,
This could just be an administrative decision.
but it could be also just administrative, yeah.
Well, yeah, I think it's our job to apply 17.88.135 to make sure it will not adversely affect, and so I think, you know, we trust you, Jacob, but I think it's something we probably should look at again. In the event Columbia Commons suddenly decides, wow, we do want to build a sign. I want to make sure that Burger King can build their sign and there's no problems. But if Columbia Commons suddenly wants to build a sign after all these years, I think we should be able to review it and, like you said, I don't know what.
You want
in
us
that
to
method.
notify them?
Pardon?
You want to notify them?
What did you say though, Jacob? How would we?
Well, you would say any sign permit for a sign within that easement requires, well, the planning commission would be the approval authority for any sign within that easement.
That,
It
any
doesn't,
sign other than the Burger King sign.
doesn't bring normally administrative decisions to us just because you want to, or we asked you to, but it's still up to your decision. Or you're not giving us the decision powers, you already have those powers, right?
It's been several years since we've had one, but for those of you who have been here a while, if you remember when we rezoned the Violets Villa property, and one of the stipulations, I don't know, maybe two of you remember that. I don't know, were you here for
The
that?
caboose?
Yeah, he was.
So one of the conditions you said is you wanted any development proposal to go before the planning commission automatically. And so this would be similar.
But that's when we did the subdivision. So when we made the subdivision, we had that, so you're saying, if it was a development.
I think it was part of the zone change, but it's all
or something
long
like
past
that.
now. But that was an example where, you know, regardless of whether or not it's administrative or requires a public hearing, it goes to the planning commission. And that's what you could say in this case.
And that makes us the decider.
Mm-hmm.
I had a couple of questions. So as written by staff, Columbia Commons, by this decision, would have to put this sign in the next year.
Burger King would.
I mean, Columbia Commons would have to put the sign in after Columbia, they put up their sign. Columbia Commons would also have to put up a sign within a year.
No, the way it's written, it says the sign easement may be used for the second sign if the proposed sign outside of the easement is established within the validity period of the
Okay.
variance.
Okay, I understand
Yeah,
that.
so if they establish their sign within a year, the second sign can go in.
Doesn't limit them
There's
to
no,
a year.
there's no time duration.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
The other question I had was, one of the first, you had here on. Yeah, on page 205, comprehensive sign plans, multi-tenant projects. Have not one principal uses proposed, so the subdivision is broken into 4 separate and individual lots and not a multi-tenant project.
Yeah, so this is a standalone, single principal use.
It's not like
Starbucks.
grocery outlet.
Or Starbucks is a good example. Mod Pizza, Starbucks.
Yeah.
That's a multi-tenant.
Yeah.
Project, yeah, all on the same lot.
Right, thank you.
So as long as Burger King abides by the terms of the sign permit, they're gonna get their sign. They're just trying to say, hey neighbor. We're gonna be a good neighbor and also fight for you to be able to put your sign in.
They can put it in wherever still, they can wait another.
And that was the intent of the easement in the first place was, so you're really going
Status
along
quo.
with the, yeah. So, I mean, to me, the only point that Columbia Commons would put in their sign is if, I mean, it'd be a service to their tenants. All those people that are in Columbia Commons, all those businesses, unless you know they're there, nobody knows they're there. So if they came along and said Columbia Commons, we want signage on the highway too, and as long as they could meet the requirements of the sign.
They're still using the one as the main entrance.
Right. And there's no
And
point.
any
for them to spend
signage
money on it
beyond
because
that is off their street. Yeah,
It's an advantage to their tenants.
right.
So the process at Columbia Commons, we grant this variance and then Burger King puts in the sign. A year from now, Columbia Commons files for a sign permit. Is that something? Is that something that we could say no to, or you could say no to? It's up to you, Jacob.
Well, I mean, if it complies with our rules, then we would say yes. Usually there's not a lot of discretion in sign permitting. Because it's all very numeric, you know, your square footage, your height, all that stuff. So as long as it complies with those standards, you're good to go.
If Columbia Commons comes in, they're gonna want a low sign like the one they have, which wouldn't interfere, would it, with the pole sign? I mean, they'd have to put theirs up there too.
Yeah, that's a good point, Audrey. I didn't mention this.
I mean, they both
Yeah.
can exist on the same
So-
lot very easily.
Large pole signs like the one Burger King wants
Right,
are limited to a distance between pole signs. So that would not allow them to place a pole sign in this
Yeah.
sign easement. So
I don't think
Columbia
that's
Commons
anything they
couldn't
want
come in
anyway.
and build a pole sign directly in front of Burger King's sign,
yeah.
because we have a spacing standard. between
Once you
pole
get your
signs.
sign up, then Commons is coming with.
Yeah.
Hopefully not.
The reader board.
Why was this easement created? See the PUD easement, but this one's in the second easement behind it.
Why was it created?
Yeah.
Because the property owner desired it.
I think it was part of the wheeling and dealing at the
Yeah.
time when they were arranging things. And they probably thought, well, maybe someday we would want Cause that highway frontage, that's pretty sought after, the highway visibility. And they were probably just thinking ahead, well, we may wanna sign someday. And it was probably just part of their negotiations at the time to make sure they had that in place.
It was all one property owner and it was subdivided into
Right.
a portion when it was cut off of the commons. Yeah.
Yeah.
So any other questions of staff before we close the record, the hearing? Okay. Hearing is now closed. There's no text here, but anyway. All right, sorry. Hearing no further questions from the commission and no further responses from staff, the public record is closed. This matter is returned to the table. It is. Good, Mike. All right. Other discussion?
I have a comment. We want businesses to come to town. If my real estate business was in the back, I would want a sign on the highway. So I just don't understand why we wouldn't. Experience.
I asked a lot of questions about, of the applicant and staff, but having now heard all the testimony and the recommendations of staff, I'm satisfied that, this is my deliberation, but I'm satisfied that that granting this variance would satisfy St. Helens Municipal Code 17.88.13 sign adjustments, and in particular, my concern that the adjustment will not adversely affect the function or the appearance of the development and use of the subject property. I think even if the Commons wanted to put another sign in that location of a low, because they wanted to add, then that to me, I don't think it would be anything adverse. It's a commercial property with commercial frontage, so
Not at all.
yeah.
They have visibility issues, so they have to have it small.
Which, for the common?
Yeah.
That comes with a sign permit.
Corner, yeah.
Well, yeah. Not really, if it's placed like the other one. I went in and out of that building
But
10 times a day for.
that precludes them to doing something that would be bigger and
I don't think they would.
visibility.
I don't
I
think,
don't think
it
What would
just
they-
wouldn't fit with me.
something similar probably.
It would be, yeah, a replica of what they already have.
Right.
No, I think we're fine.
So do
Doing more deliberation.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Did you want to add anything to the criteria that?
No, I decided to just leave it like staff recommended. It's-
Before you change your mind over the motion of the grant variance?
Well, I think we should make a finding. I think we should, I would add to that. Can I add to that a comment?
That's what I was asking.
Of course.
You know,
Yeah, well, I think we
and
should make
Steve,
a
do you have
finding.
anything to say?
Yes, yes, I do. I think we should make a finding under that the planning commission has found that grants the variance and that we've as requested and as recommended by staff. And that we find that the requested variance meets the criteria for approval under 17.88.135.
Is that by heart, you know? I make a motion, we do whatever Steve just said, because we're not gonna do that.
I second that.
Isn't that covered under the warning?
Yes.
You can second your own.
Well,
We have a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
No opposed? We have a motion for me to sign the.
I'll make a motion to sign it.
in a
I'll
second.
second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Restaurant, I hope it's a big success.
Look forward to seeing you guys over there. Great night, everyone. Thank you.
Night.
Success
You're welcome.
story right here. Planning commission term expiration.
Okay, so planning commission term expirations, I'm assuming Sheila and Audrey are still fixing to not continue.
We can't. We can't.
Well, you could elect to keep your to,
Decisions.
yeah, and compete with other interviewees, but you both seem to have suggested that after this term, you're gonna ride off into the sunset.
Is there any provisions for like interim, like they could do it till we get, I mean, there's a lot of positions gonna be open here, so
Yeah, I think they're gonna have 3.
there could be 3 openings, so.
I would make,
Oh, yeah.
Pro tem.
doing a, yeah,
Well, I mean, we have a lot of people. So when, last time we did interviews, there was 4 people. Of course, one of those 4 is sitting up here now, Mr. Lowe. The other 3 people, we spoke with them and they all said that, we said, okay, well, we did these interviews, but we know we have at least 2 openings coming up because the 2 planning commissioners said that, they're finally gonna ride off into the sunset. Which is sad for me because you're the last 2 that were here when I started.
well, then we'll stay around.
We're pretty close.
Yeah, you were close, yeah.
Skip interview.
Oh, wow, that's crazy, that's crazy.
Why did we?
Whoa.
So, so we have 3 people already in the queue who would like to interview again. We told them, well, we have these 2 people, do you want to keep your hat in the ring? So, the 3 people that we interviewed with Russ are still potential candidates. We have an obligation to, post an ad in the paper again, and so we'll do that. So it's possible we'll have more. Now, Commissioner Toski has thrown his hat in the potential city councilor ring. And I think there are 5 candidates and 2 positions. And so whether or not he succeeds in that, we'll have to see, but that's a potential 3rd one. We won't know that until November. And historically, we've started the interview process earlier. That way we kind of have that figured out. We have the vacancies figured out, or we have several months to try to get someone. But in this case, we know we have some people who are already interested. So I think we'll advertise just to see if we can get more than 3.
We should try to do that, I'd say something. Don't miss that.
So
Can I just make a few comments while we're potentially looking for people? No? Sorry. All right, thanks, Sheila. With Sheila's permission, I think we should start advertising and maybe discuss potentially as a body. Now that we're doing the proactive thing more and going into even if I am not elected to council, or even if I am elected to council, I'm hoping that the planning commission continues in the direction it's decided to go in this year, and that is being more proactive in its role of assisting the council in managing the city, passing laws. And there are aspects that I think, time, number 1, is an aspect of applicants. 2, thinking finance, some people with background in finance might be good. Just throwing some things out there as ideas that we could discuss. I think there are things that we have 7 people on this commission, and different people can bring different energy and focus to different areas that affect the city. And I think, and we can help bring clarity to the public. We can help bring clarity to the public process. And so I'm hoping we can start thinking about what it is that we need to continue to improve in our decision-making process and our aid to the council. Those are just the general thoughts. So we're putting that out there, that people have, I recruited a lot of people and said for people to apply. And I would encourage my fellow commissioners to think about what our needs are in the future, and the role this commission's gonna be playing for the council. And let's try and get as strong of people as we can with time on their hands that can help dig into some of these complex issues and then make recommendations to the council so we can get the best decisions made as possible.
And so that's a good segue to whenever we have these vacancies, we figure out who is gonna be on the planning commission interview committee. And that's 3 folks.
Replacement. I think you would do yourselves more justice if you had a more spread out planning commission coming from other areas in the city rather than just downtown. It's kind of overloaded at this point in time with downtown. I was put into balance off because I was in urban growth. And one of the other fellows at the time that I came in happened to be from the other side of the highway as well. Right now, we have nobody from that side of the highway. Except me,
Man,
who actually lived there. And
I don't think it really meant, I don't think you don't really, in your business, I don't see that matters. You just need somebody who envisions what they want, their city and the livability to be.
People with
So
I
I,
agree with Sheila. I think it does matter.
have some needs or wants or whatever from the other areas of town. More balanced.
I'm not sure if it would be a definite, criteria, but I definitely think it should be taken into consideration. And I think people from all parts of town should be encouraged that are interested in the
I'm not saying
plan.
it should be mandatory, it's just that it would be nice if there was more representation on the other side of the highway as well as down here.
well, you can't, that would be nice, but you can't start an interview with where you live.
No, and I don't, no, I agree, we cannot make that a requirement, I think, or a condition of doing it. But I do believe in the advertisement and the publicity and trying to recruit potential candidates. I'm absolutely behind Sheila in that, not
Well, I
only
agree with that. The
geographically.
next thing is we can't mandate
No, right, and I think that's what I heard.
any candidates
was
with
saying.
either side of Highway 30.
No, and I'm not saying that either, but I do think in terms of our publicity, we could perhaps see how we are doing casting the net to get potential candidates. But yes, I agree completely with you
Not legally.
that Audrey, with you that, yeah, no, we cannot be a condition that if we're looking at the best candidates, we have to accept the best candidates regardless of geographical or gender or race or whatever. But we can make an effort to try to help people be aware that who may not have otherwise thought about applying
But
to
in what manner?
personal conversation with individuals, that sort of
That's a
thing.
given.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying put it in the advertisement the way.
No,
Okay.
no, I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
I think some of this stuff,
Forms.
you have a group of people and the interview committees, has a toss up between one or another. And sometimes those are the things, well, this person lives in here, or all these other people are at, this person's over there, they're kind of equal otherwise, so that may be one of those elements that teeters it in one way or the other. But that's the value of being on the interview committee, is you gotta kind of think about those things.
I just don't wanna be in the position that if we have 3 openings and we only have 3 candidates, we have to take 3 candidates.
You shouldn't have to.
You don't have to, I mean, you don't have to, you could go back and say, go back to the drawing board.
We've had a couple of candidates that, the one were good. Did take anybody else.
I wanna just kind of go on a little bit more what Sheila said, and that is, you know, I live down here, I see a lot of what goes on down here. And I think it's important that we have eyes and ears in other parts of town, because
Right.
where you live
Right.
is where you see what's going on, you bring in perspective, you come to the planning commission, say, hey, look, this is what's going on over on Pittsburgh Road. And, you know, we need to take a look at it, or this is how I see things developing in this area. And if you don't happen to get over to that side of town or not, you may not realize it. So I think it is important to have, if possible, as broad of eyes and ears on this town.
No, I agree with that, we just can't advertise it, nor can we ask, hey, where do you live? It's part of the condition of interviewing. That's the same as if, you know, discrimination for in a different manner, we can't do it.
Well, I think we've done a good job at diversifying the commission by different people in different trades and circumstances too. We don't have 5 attorneys sitting
Not
here,
just
or 5
location.
realtors, or.
I don't think life attorneys would be a good idea.
Can you imagine?
Life attorneys would cut it.
So.
Yeah, the rules would prohibit it, no more than 2 in it.
But
So, okay.
We'd still be questioning the Burger King guys, they'd still be there getting,
Yeah.
they wouldn't be out of that seat yet.
are you sure that's the way you spell Burger King?
Yeah.
So,
Longer meetings too.
Oh,
so what about, is there 3 people who are interested in being on the interview committee?
I'll do it this time. I haven't been on one yet.
Okay, so Dan, Jennifer, and Russ. Everybody's cool with that?
I can adjust my work schedule to do that.
I am. I'm fine with it.
Okay, I thought you were opposed to it for a second.
That's great.
When is
Last left.
when is it?
Well, so now that I know, now that we've,
I'm gonna make you an offer, but I'll talk to you. No, it's kind of doing it until.
so, later this week, probably tomorrow, I'll let the city recorder know that it's time to advertise. And usually it's for a 30-day period. So that's, we cast the net, we see who we get. Depending on who we get, 1, 2, 0. We already have 3 people. I'll let those 3 people know that things are back on. Of course, one of those people should be aware of that because they're right here.
Sam, longer than 30 days?
Yes.
Is it, just so, why limit it to a month? Why not go 60 days, cast our net? So, 30 days, a lot of times word of mouth is how people hear about these things. So.
It is, and that's, the city, Kathy has her program way of doing it. And one of the reasons we started talking about this in September instead of October is before, we'd go through and not get anybody, and then it's like, oh, son of a gun, it's January and we don't have this resolved yet. So we start this now to increase the odds that it will be resolved and the appointments will be made in time for the January meeting.
I think there's some level of urgency for the applicant too, if they go, well, I have 60 days, so I'll. Great for me to put in my application.
You can always re-advertise after 30 days if you need to.
Don't get anything.
I think 4 of the 5 council candidates applied on the last day, so.
yeah, there were, that's
Human nature is human nature.
Right?
Were you one of them?
Yeah. Transparency, Russ, transparency.
Okay, well, I think unless you wanna talk about that more, I have what I need. The thing forward. Which brings us to the next item.
That's right. Council reports, land use matters.
Now this is something that came up, this was at the request of, our counselor. Do you remember this?
Apparently not. Oh my gosh,
Ready for the presentation?
the land,
Okay, well, I can talk about it. So, the discussion was, and you said, let's put this on the agenda.
okay, I
And so,
won't deny that, it's.
it was, so a lot of times, the planning commission gets an item and then it goes to the council. And in this case, it was for the lock vacation.
Okay,
And you contacted me, cause
Yes.
it was already past the planning commission.
oh, okay,
And so now we were working on the report with the council. And you posed the question on how informed do we keep the planning commission of like new items
Okay,
and
thank you.
such
yeah.
to the council.
Okay, it's coming back to me, but I apologize, it's first week back with students and my mind has obviously been on other things. But I think if I recall, that was about was just wanting to make sure, as I know Jacob had shared some information with council members about stuff that's coming up, it's stuff that whether or not we should, as a policy, just make it a regular policy that on some of these things that planning commissioners receive the same information, be kept in the loop, so that if things are coming before the council and we're they have information, especially I think in this variance where we were being asked to there was an appeal to us. But anyway, sharing the information, and one of my, and so when Jacob shared that information, I asked if it had been shared with the planning commission. And he said, well, no reason it, I guess, can't be, we just haven't had this practice. So this is what I'm wanting to find out, is if this is something that when we have this kind of routine information that might have, that's under consideration by the council, that has to do with planning issues, right? That just you would all be CC'd on the emails and getting that information so that you're not wondering where did that issue go? What happened with that? That they're kept in the loop.
Maybe at the least, or maybe in the least, just at this meeting, have a spot for you to give an update, give us a report.
Well, I can do that. I mean, we can do that and we can give the report, but I think that's in addition to this. So I can, I can say what happened at the meetings, but this is prior to the meetings as we're getting to the deliberation, because giving you the opportunity then to provide your input to council prior to the decision being made.
I think it would be great addition to what we get.
The circumstance, so there's the report, right? The report's in the packet. But the report in the packet is due a week before the hearing.
Right.
And then,
There was additional,
we receive stuff afterwards and, hey, body, here's this new stuff. And I think that's what prompted.
okay,
your
and it was,
question.
right, okay. Hey, Jacob, thank you, you're so good at what you do, Christina, thank you. But yes, it was something I had, like the council had received day of or early, the day of of our hearing. And I was fortunate that I was able to see it because it was still summer and I wasn't, working, so I didn't. So I had a chance to review it prior to the afternoon or to the hearing. But it's that kind of thing, so that, yes, when the agenda comes out, I'm assuming that when an appeal of your decisions or other things come before the council, you're seeing that that's on the city's agenda. But there are items in that are submitted within the last 24 hours or whatever that are not in the agenda packet that's available to you online. But I'm thinking that at the very least, that is something that should be not only provided to the council, but provided to you as planning commissioners, since it's pertinent to a decision that you had made or will be making. And it just hasn't been practice. It hasn't been the practice to do that, but I'm thinking it would be a good practice.
I think it
That would be
for-
great.
Yeah.
I've been trying to keep up with the council anyway, and so I'm getting a little bit more. Getting it, being fed to us is.
Yeah, I think it'd be a bonus for commissioners, or for planning commissioners.
So that if, okay, so stuff comes up, if more information comes to submitted to the council between the publication of the agenda and the material packets, that you would be provided the same information that is before the council, because it would give you the opportunity, I mean, as Steve did, as Commissioner Toski did at this particular thing, he came as, oh no, it was the other issue, it was what was it, Steve, you came before us and you gave a neutral testimony on an issue.
Comstock.
Okay, it was the Comstock. But anyway, it would provide, I think, even though you had discussion as a plan commission, if you had further information you wanted to give to the council at the public hearing appeal, it would give you an opportunity to express your thoughts.
Yeah, we could potentially make resolutions and requests that the council doesn't have to follow them, but if we wanted to, as a commission, say, we weighed in on this, here's our thoughts. And you've got one more set of information.
So, okay, so I don't know if you need to make any formal decision on that, but just whether that, saying, yes, we would like that information.
Yeah, I think as long as we know, we'll just try to feed it to you in an efficient way. It'd probably just by email.
I think we need anything formal right now, see how it goes. If we want to formalize it later, we can always. I mean, otherwise we're gonna form a rule or something. I don't think this is the right circumstances to form a rule.
Yeah, it's just kind of it's an information it's an inclusion courtesy.
Right.
Yeah.
First.
Yeah.
Out of respect for the work you're doing and have done on things, so.
Okay,
Thank you.
so that we will note that.
Great. I think it's a very positive thing.
God, I could have got away not even putting that on the agenda.
Again, you're a man of honor and integrity, Jacob, and I'm glad you did, and thank you for helping to get me
Sure. Yeah.
on track.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I have anybody have any, further questions about the planning director decisions that are previously emailed? I don't know about a lot of them actually, but I had one question on partition in Southeast Howard and Kelly Street. This is pretty close to the same area up there. So we got those commercial lots along Highway 30. What's happening there?
Well, that is, Mr. Hess owns several Napa Auto Parts stores.
Mm.
And we had a meeting with him years ago, and he eventually wants to do that there. But what he wants to do in the more immediate time frame is get some fill on there and get it a little more prepped. And you can see that there's a whole lot of polygons in there, so there's a lot of property lines. And so part of the prep is getting rid of those property lines just to make it a little bit easier for our e-permitting system. But also then those lines are not there and interfering with building placement and stuff like that. So it's kind of a prep, if you will.
It's the opposite of a partition.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one parcel partitions, they're not common, but they can occur. I've seen very few in my time. They exist.
So that's less Waters property, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
Right here.
So it'll be interesting, you know, this place where there hasn't been a lot of commercial development, Burger King, you know, they wanna get going fast. And there'll be some other ones, and then we'll see how quick Mr. Hess moves on his site.
Just felt like there was something going on there, some action.
Yeah, we've been talking with him for years and years. You know, that pre-op meeting we had, it's probably close to 10 years ago now. And it comes up occasionally.
So, moving on the planning department activity reports, August, that's,
Yeah,
anybody wanted to,
I think I heard that.
get your report out there, Russell?
Yeah, you say something, Jenny. Riverfront Street Utilities Design Engineering, and when you put the bid out for more construction, is that for the total site? How far out is that?
No, it's for what's called the base bid. So it's all the underground utilities for the whole site, but it's not the street connection for the whole site.
Correct, so utilities for.
Yeah. Yep.
Let's see. And you met with the Main Street Alliance Coordinator?
Yeah, Amara.
Yeah, Mara, what's the status on that?
I mean, she's up and running as the new
Right.
staff for the Main Street Alliance. Yeah, we're gonna try to talk regularly, make sure she's appraised of planning related things, and I wanna try to get her more involved in the parklet program that we have. So she can hopefully implement better looking and more parklets in the city. But yeah.
Right.
Meet and greet.
Okay. Thanks.
I don't know when the proper time to ask a question is. It's referring back to actually last month's meeting minutes, and Councilor Berkeley, you said, agreed to mention to the city council about our change in time to 6 o'clock. Did they have any feedback on that?
Oh.
Actually, yes.
Sorry, I was gonna.
No.
I had that on my notes to make sure our city recorder was aware. And I actually brought it up this morning at our managers meeting. And she wasn't, now she is, so then that way January, those meetings will be moved to 6 P.M.
Yeah, so that's fine. We just have to, when in December, the council sets public meeting schedule for the next year. So yeah, I think the point was, you're the commissioners, and even though there's gonna be some changeover, you determine the time. And also we should nail down, and I don't know, Dan, if this might be talking with, I don't know, with me or Rick or whatever, I did mention that you had the desire to have what I call quarterly joint meetings scheduled, and not just as come what may. So there was openness to that. I think what we need to do is think about what the next steps are, is finding dates on a calendar that work, so that we could do that. So that also would have to be done well with Kathy prior to the December meeting where we set the calendar for 2023. So if you're still wanting as a commission to have quarterly joint meetings and put them specifically on the calendar, council's is agreeable to that.
Great.
And we just need them to look at dates, so I'm not sure if that means coordinating how, through Jacob or whatever, huh?
We have a holiday meeting. Nice.
We can't talk about that, okay.
The end of the year, the winter one, you know,
Anyway,
Hanukkah, Christmas.
So there's
Winter solstice, pagan festival.
one question is, do we do it like last time where it was in conjunction with a normally scheduled regular session, and just prior to that, That seemed to be what the council favored.
Well, I'm not so sure. The mayor even expressed that when we were, again, I forget if it was the Comstock appeal or the street vacation, that the council should maybe be that we don't need to limit ourselves to public hearings and other meetings on those Wednesdays, because what we are finding is if we schedule a 5:30 public hearing, 5:30 public hearing, and council's regular session supposed to start at 7, we started a few of them now at like 8 o'clock because so in order that we're not constrained by that hour and a half, it does not necessarily have to be. Now, it might be a different matter with the planning commission. It shouldn't be, it's not like a public hearing where we can structure it in such a way where we can be efficient. But I think there is an openness that we could do it on other time. And I think we're also, the city council has changed its work session starting times beginning this next week from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. And I think with that, and our hope is that we become more efficient in the conduct of the meetings, so that as we get things done, they won't stretch on and we won't be scrambling for time to break before the regular session. So I'm thinking as part of that, because we're moving to the 2 o'clock time, we're not looking at necessarily stuffing in additional things like this on Wednesdays. So I think it's open. We can bring that up to discussion, and our next council meeting is the 21st. So I think I guess I should ask, I can ask the mayor about getting that on as a topic for discussion at our next work session. And talk about what amenable times would be, and finding out from you all what your preferences. Would you try it on Wednesdays? Would you want us to meet before your meetings? So we can talk about that, but I'll see about getting that on the work session agenda to at least begin to have the discussion.
Some food with it. Have food.
I think there's some value in having that A meeting before we lose these 2 senior commissioners, because they have guidance and history of the relationship before. I don't know, so might be interesting.
We're gonna lose Doug's retiring, and either Rick or Steve will be the ones that will be going forward as mayor, so it's sort of a changing of the guard, if you would.
Yeah.
Might be a good time to get together before.
Yeah, and that would be very good. I think even with the new council, that early on in the year, we're going to have to do a lot of give a lot of background information. So we were lost with when Councillor Locke left. He took 20 years of council memory with him. When Councillor Morton leaves, he'll be taking 16 years. And so regardless of how the election turns out, the next council, the senior person, will have 6 years. And then 2 of us, 2 years, and then 2 with 0. So the institutional memory as such is going to be,
Exactly my point on the commission is.
yeah. So that's what, so the same kind of thing we should, yeah, that would be a good thing to do. So
Good night.
anyway, all the way around.
For that reason, and also it would be important for the new groups the next year to keep on tune with each other. So
So you're suggesting maybe one like in January, I mean, right away, or you're looking at having some kind of joint meeting between the election?
December.
Before they're gone.
Yeah.
Before, okay, so that would be a separate issue where we could set a time, but then beyond that, we'd have to set, but. Jenny,
Oh, I feel like Council President Morton expressed he would be gone all of October. He's not gonna be at either council.
Oh, that's right,
meeting.
he's gonna be gone.
And then prior to the election, that's gonna be really tough, if that's the reason for trying to get it.
So, yeah,
What time of year?
Yeah, and then you're in,
Thanksgiving,
Remember.
Christmas time.
Yeah.
We can invite them back for the meeting.
Sure.
I mean,
We could
yeah.
gather around,
Honorary.
gather around the campfire and tell stories about. So, yeah, that might be difficult, but thank you, Jenny, for.
It might be nice just for a get together anyway. Kind of a social. Not super business-like.
I'm
Networking.
right now.
No,
Tough to
stop
get
it.
together.
All right.
Your house isn't done yet.
Yeah, that's true. We should go up there and scrape more paint.
And like you've been out there scraping.
See your wife.
Give me a
out there.
break.
All right,
TJ.
I guess we're down to the proactive items, the House Bill 115.
Well, this is Steve's.
All right, thank
You're
you.
on, would you like to go sit at that table and address?
Actually, I think I should do it from the, on the post. So let's see, where are we? Okay. Here's a little PowerPoint I prepared and thank you very much for helping with that, Jenny.
Yeah.
So this is about a proactive item that I sent a lot of material on. And I would have liked for our initial proactive item to be something a little more simple, but I think we're gonna rise to the challenge of something that is facing our city and every other city in the state. St. Helens record of caring, see, I forgot the S there, because I typed that up right before I hear. So first thing is that we need to remember that our city is a generous city and we help our people. We must always remember that when our local people have issues with their health, their mental health, their addiction, we take care of them. We have places for people to stay. We have places for people to get treated. We have the services of our food bank. Nobody is hungry here. We have drug rehabilitation facilities. We have mental health outreach and treatment programs, and we take care of our own. This is not about that. Our city is a generous city, and we need to never forget that. Next slide, because I don't have the little clicker.
This is everybody.
Okay, sorry. Our homeless, so far St. Helens has made efforts to prevent homelessness in St. Helens. Our problems with homelessness for St. Helens come from people outside of the city. In 2016, a concerted effort to remove large homeless camps from Sand Island occurred with success in the Keith Lock vacation research that I was doing. I ran across a hearing that I still have a copy of where Tony was talking before the council saying how Sand Island is full of homeless encampments, that people don't want to be on the docks any longer, that it's not safe for families to go over there. Something had to be done. And the council took action. Sand Island was, there's a concession on Sand Island now. The homeless and the people that were squatting on Sand Island were evicted. And we have a very wonderful family camping area, which before was a gigantic problem for us, not only because of the people that were living there were not only destroying the place, but they were also preying upon us. There were thefts and there were problems on the docks. So that was a success. And in 2022, efforts were made by our city to remove boat campers from the St. Helens docks. Russ and I were both personally involved in speaking to the council before either of us were on the commission about the problems on the docks. The city council reacted, created a task force. I think Dan might have been involved in that, but the Marine folks were involved in that. No, he's not. but we created a concession at the docks, and we successfully now have been able to remove the boat campers from St. Helens docks and in fact from our waterways. Camping has been disallowed in St. Helens parks for many years, and I talked to Doug Morton about that. That was something he spearheaded. That's also a success. We don't have homeless encampments in our parks. What we have in our parks are places for every citizen to go and to enjoy the day, to play Frisbee golf. And the problems with homelessness in the parks and the homeless people in parks is that their occupancy is different from the occupancy of the people that are trying to use the park in the way it was designed. People living in the park and being aggressive about other people coming to the park essentially prevents the use of the park by all of the other citizens. Every citizen, whether you're citizens of this town or you're a visitor, has the opportunity to use a park in a way that follows the rules. And the problem that we have with anybody using the park without following the rules is you're going to get a citation, you're going to be removed from the park, and unfortunately a lot of the problems with misuse of the park system comes from homeless who essentially want to live in the parks, which isn't allowed. And we cite houseless people for law violations. Anybody is cited for law violations, but also houseless people are cited. So they're not exempt. So if I litter the ground, I'm gonna get a ticket. If the homeless person litters the ground, the homeless person gets a ticket. So we have been essentially enforcing our laws consistently among everybody in the city. And that has produced an environment in St. Helens where we enjoy a low crime rate. We enjoy our public facilities are there for our children when they want to use the playgrounds. We don't hear about needles being in people's front yards or human waste. And this is because we have consistently made everybody in St. Helens follow the law. Everybody follows the same law. Nobody is exempt from following the law. Okay, next slide. But other governments have acted in different ways regarding folks. They've had social services handing out needles. They haven't enforced drug laws. They haven't enforced laws concerning sleeping on the streets, and they have not enforced their laws in general over a period of many years. And now those cities are reaping what they have sown, because there's a lot of folks that come from all around and think this is a place I can go and I can get money, I can camp on the streets, I can do drugs, and it's overwhelming the government. So I do have there was a ton of YouTubes I could have done. This was a 4-minute one, and Jenny, can you just copy that link and paste it, or can we click on that and?
We'll see what happens.
All right, we'll see what happens. Maybe nothing.
I don't know if we have sound. I will.
That's an advertisement.
Yeah.
Because we've had amazing champions like
We
you
do.
that organize
I
the
think
strongest
it's
protections
too
for
bad.
underdog rights. Land
I forgot.
Actually, this is part of the problem.
That we trust.
And
Yeah.
that's something that we should not make any secret.
It's really scary.
For years, these neighbors have been watching the city's homeless crisis spread across parts of southeast
This is
Portland.
1 month ago.
Now it's right outside their front door.
I wanna cry, I just want my house back.
Christina Hartnett lives on 80th and Howell, where a majority of the campers stay.
My lawn is now becoming a public bathroom.
She fears leaving her house just to go to work.
And it is scary when you have grown men meth raging in your driveway the last thing I feel safe doing is going out and saying, hey, can you please move so I can go to work?
Calling the police in the city is an everyday chore with little reward.
So far, no one has come to help us.
Central City Concern Clean Start crews assessed this site Thursday. It was one of about 1,900 other campsites reported just this week. In the past 10 days, they found 272 encampments that pose a greater health and safety risk, which is why they haven't removed the camps in this neighborhood. But just getting the city to come out and assess it has been a full-time job.
I have to report from like four different bureaus, and I have to report that report to a report, and I have to report that report to a second report. And it's the only way to get any kind of traction. I feel like nobody hears us. Nobody cares about us.
This mother didn't want to be identified on camera, afraid of retaliation from those living on the streets. She rarely lets her children outside to play.
It was very sad. Because they're just kids, so they went on play.
I don't know where they're coming from. Tess has lived in this neighborhood for 35 years. These boards now cover her front door windows after they were smashed by those living on the streets. She also installed security cameras around her house.
Scared, most of all scared because I don't know what they're gonna go next.
It's also affecting a nearby restaurant.
I've come into the bathroom and found people standing there in their underwear, scrubbing up in the sink in a sports bar in the bathroom. It unnerves our customers when they pull in and they see people overdosing on the sidewalks out in front of our restaurant.
I live right here in the next seat. Jennifer Suprick is 43 years old.
I'm an addict and my family doesn't condone it.
She lives in this broken down van on the Southeast Powell Boulevard frontage road.
So I just like I need that.
It's one of the areas neighbors are afraid to go.
I mean, we can coexist. It's just a matter of some homeless people they're resentful towards the neighborhood because of the way they treat them.
That is not always what it seems, we aren't always what we seem.
Brendan Harvey has spent most of his life in and out of homelessness.
So usually it has something to do with relapse, and after a relapse, my housing usually falls out from under me, and then I usually have nowhere to turn.
He understands why neighbors are frustrated.
So I feel like they have a right to be upset.
He's seen firsthand the increase in violence from some of the campers.
I feel like it's just gotten more bold, more rash, people aren't as afraid to do things that are, have to do with criminality.
It is gonna take one of us getting severely hurt or killed before they will do anything to come help us.
Meanwhile,
please come help me.
Does our city do something about it? Are they doing something about these people that need some help?
This never-ending cry for help continues.
It's just been going on so long now that we're all over it. They're over it, we're over it, everybody's over it.
Now, the city only has the resources to remove about 50 encampments a week, and they say that they assess each report about 48 hours after they get it, and they receive hundreds of reports for high-risk camps every day. Ashley?
Yeah, Larry, you feel for everybody there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
Hello there, ladies.
So we get the ultimate laundry hack anyway. So in Portland alone, 270 plus homeless encampments. And the solution from our government in Salem, fortunately, is to spread the problem to all the cities by hindering those cities from enforcing their laws. And the city of St. Helens is facing a twofold problem. One is on the HB 3115 side, which is the law that which is the law that was enacted, and then there's also Martin v. Boise. I mean, homelessness is a huge issue, and it's going to take a lot more than a 14,000 population to be solved. I do have some ideas on what needs to be done on a statewide and nationwide level, but we're really here today to talk about St. Helens and what do we do and how do we make recommendations to continue to keep our town the way that we want it to be and the way that we've worked to keep it for many, many years. One huge advantage that we have is that we have been working to protect ourselves from folks coming from outside of our city into here and committing crimes. We've enforced our laws and we've made new laws to deter conduct that and to strengthen our conduct. So what HB 3115 does is that it attacks the city's ability to defend itself from lawlessness. In particular, it tries to it does create a special class of persons, quote, those experiencing homelessness, end quote, which it does not define. And what HB 3115 does is it takes away the tools the city has to enforce its laws. So the first thing it does is it provides an affirmative defense against criminal prosecution of city and county laws for sitting, lying, sleeping, keeping or dry outdoors on public property by creating an affirmative defense that the law is not objectively reasonable. And reasonableness is determined on the basis of the totality of the circumstances, including but not limited to the impact of the law on persons experiencing homelessness. So I have met with the city prosecutor already on this subject, and so if the city wanted to use the tools, we do have laws on the books, and Jacob has in a joint meeting reviewed those laws. And if we wanted to use our city ordinances, basically anybody being prosecuted for violating these laws would have an affirmative defense of attacking the law as being unreasonable. And I've been practicing law for 35 years. I'm licensed in Oregon and in California. I'm unaware of any other law that allows a person accused of a crime to not only defend themselves from the charge itself, but to also attack the law itself as an affirmative defense on the basis of reasonableness. And also, I'm unaware of any standard in the law that thus far is objectively reasonable, because reasonableness is a matter of opinion, and I'm not sure if there can be objective reasonableness. So this is quite a tangle, this HB 3115. And basically, I think the design of the law is that to thwart any city or county trying to enforce their laws and basically almost make them unenforceable. And that's potentially the effect. Okay, next slide. Then there's the civil aspect of the law, which creates a cause of action for lawsuits attacking city and county laws for sitting, lying, sleeping, or keeping warm and dry outdoors by persons experiencing homelessness, which is not defined, to challenge the objective reasonableness of the city or county laws described in paragraph 2, which are basically the sleeping, lying, dry. And it allows for injunctive relief and attorney's fees. So on the one hand, HB 3115 makes it very difficult to prosecute violations of the law. And then on the other hand, the city is also being subjected to potentially unlimited numbers of lawsuits attacking its laws, saying that they are not objectively reasonable, and by profiteering law firms seeking attorney's fees. So the city can't enforce its criminal laws, and at the same time it's under attack by lawsuits seeking attorney's fees, and injunctive relief for the courts to simply wipe the laws off the books by saying they're not objectively reasonable. Lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit can be filed. HB 3115 is a recipe for anarchy. Next, so there are ways that a city can exempt itself from the effect of HB 3115. What the city can do is to review its laws and to make under a policy that recognizes the social nature of the problem of homeless individuals camping on public property, and to implement a policy to ensure the most humane treatment for removal of homeless individuals from camping sites on public property. So this is a 1995 law, and there's more to it than this, and I've simplified it, and I think next slide will be that. So under 203.079, which is also something under the exemption statute, or the exemption part of HB 3115, is a policy developed pursuant to ORS 203.077, has to have certain elements to it, and there's basically, it's a longer list of things that need to be done if you're going to remove a homeless encampment. How you have to give warning, how you have to collect property, how where it has to be stored, people's right to get their property back, and things like that. So we do have the opportunity as a government to study our laws, to review them for their humane treatment of everyone, frankly, but in particular, people experiencing homeless, and then to bring our laws under the umbrella of ORS 203.077 or 203.079, and then that would exempt our laws from HB 3115. So there would not be an affirmative defense, and we would be immune from civil lawsuits. That's how I read that statute. And I am one attorney and one planner, so let's go to the next slide. So basically what I'm proposing that the Planning Commission do is that we do study our laws about sleeping, lying, and camping, and making sure that we are treating people humanely, that we engage with our already charitable organizations, and make sure that there are means through which that when we do encounter people that are in need of help, that we can help them, that we identify our citizens, because and definitely make sure that people who are from St. Helens are helped, because frankly, I think that that's the kind of people that we are, and that's the kind of people we've always been. I think we should strengthen and clarify our laws regarding those experiencing homelessness so that it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. That's my idea. Don't know if that's the best idea or not, but definitely reviewing the laws to make sure they're humane. And then also, I think through this study, in the event that, so the purpose of the study, we study it, look at our laws, make recommendations to council. Council then can decide if it's a good idea or not. We bring our laws in under this umbrella, which hopefully will exempt us. But along the way, we also meet with our law enforcement professionals and our prosecutors in the event the court should somehow hold that our fitting our laws under the protective umbrella of HB or of ORS 203.077 and 079. In the event the court finds that our attempt to bring them under that umbrella is not sufficient, or for whatever reason is pierced through, that our prosecutors then are able to defend our laws as objectively reasonable. And we provide data, we provide our findings as a planning commission, so that that we can prove that our laws are objectively reasonable. What's the next slide? Okay, so then also tied to this is the federal problem. So the HB 3115 issue, but I think concomitant with the problem is the Martin versus Boise case. Martin versus Boise is a federal Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals decision wherein the city of Boise was attempting to remove a homeless individual and cite a homeless individual for sleeping in a bathroom in the winter time. And what the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal did was it uniquely applied the Eighth Amendment against cruel and unusual punishment and said that since the city of Boise didn't have a place, people didn't have a place to go, the person didn't have any place to go, then the law was essentially couldn't be enforced because keeping warm and out of the weather is a human right to survive. And by enforcing their law that a person can't get warm and dry, was taking away, was cruel and unusual punishment. It was appealed to the Supreme Court, which rejected cert. I'm thinking eventually this issue is going to get before the Supreme Court. This law, Martin v. Boise, has then been applied in a case called Blake versus Grants Pass, where the city of Grants Pass attempted to enforce a no camping citation on a woman that was trying to sleep in their Riverside Park. The court certified her case as a class. So despite the fact there were shelters and there were campgrounds, I mean, it's a long story, I could go into it, but essentially the federal magistrate held that it wasn't good enough what the city of Grants Pass had done, and the Grants Pass has a lot of resources for homeless individuals. The judge essentially discounted them all, said all of them didn't count, and issued an injunction against the city of Grants Pass that they cannot enforce their sleeping and lying laws in their parks between 7 p.m. and 10 a.m. and that injunction remains. So the city of Grants Pass now has people living in their parks under this injunction, which basically makes under a federal mandate, the police can't enforce the law. And the city of Grants Pass is completely inundated. Their parks are completely being trashed, and it's a horrible situation for the people of Grants Pass. That case, that Blake versus Grants Pass is not the law of, it's not any law, it's just a ruling. It has been appealed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, so that and arguments have been held, and in December, it's anticipated the Ninth Circuit will issue an opinion, which hopefully will peel that back, if not eliminate that decision. So part of the discussion on the Martin v. Boise case and cases like Blake versus Grants Pass is to discuss with the city council and plan alternatives to find ways that to keep us away from being getting ourselves under a federal injunction type problem. Because on the one hand, we have HB 3115, which is potentially an injunction that could be issued by a state court judge. In fact, a local municipal judge. But there's also the federal challenge, and what Blake v. City of Grants Pass judge said is, since they didn't have a place, essentially a bed for this person and everybody else, that camping was okay in the city, in the parks. So the alternative to that potentially is to explore whether we could use some of our land and so that people do have a place to camp temporarily who are not from in town here, and try to find a solution that will help us avoid federal type injunction. So Planning Commission action, study the real reasons for the homeless crisis, review our laws to ensure they are humane, exempt our laws from HB 3115, provide our prosecutors evidence to present of objectively reasonable standards, look at solutions proposed by other cities, explore the federal problems, make recommendations to council. it's a complex problem and something that we've got to work on anyway, or else other people are gonna find solutions and we're gonna adopt what others have done. The city of St. Helens has forged our path, which has led us to the very nice place we have to live now, and I think our citizens want to make sure it stays that way. And so I am proposing that we take up planning commission action on this, take it up as an action item, we'll move it to subcommittee, and we get some folks involved and we discuss how we're gonna do it, and that's my presentation. Thank you very much. This is not gonna go away, it's coming. This HB 3115 takes effect July 1, 2023, and hoping that it's gonna be okay, that's not gonna happen. You see the problem that's like literally on our front doorstep, and it's rolling our way. It's for real, and so when people, potentially start showing up here, when we start asking them to, do you need help, and processing them, we could run afoul of some of these issues unless we bring our laws in and do what we can to defend ourselves from it.
It's really twofold, isn't it? A twofold problem. One that could change this, I think, incredible place that we live. And then also, but financially for the city, because in your opinion, predatory lawsuits could be filed and the city would have to defend themselves and spend. I guess I can
I would say the chances of predatory lawsuits being filed is 80% to 90% probability. I think that any lawyer trying to make a buck is going to start filing lawsuits, and the cities are going to be inundated with lawsuits, and our budget for defending those lawsuits is going to become incredible, and then we're going to be dealing with one request an injunction after another, and basically with requests to judges saying make their laws unenforceable.
St. Helens may be able to take care of their own as far as homeless is concerned.
I agree with that.
But what do they do about the newcomer? The guy who catches a ride up here from wherever.
Well, we make sure that our laws are humanely treating that person.
The city can't take care of everybody that comes across the doorstep.
I agree with you 100%.
I'll take a moment to talk about procedure. This is the first proactive item to come before us. So as we will proactive item submission, we'll outline the reasons the commissioner believes a proactive item is something planning commission should undertake. Presentation. Proposed proactive item submission shall briefly outline suggested process of study, investigation, public involvement, timeline, and budget as applicable. The commission or suggests the planning commission undertake is for the purpose of planning item consideration and not binding. So then, having staff has looked at it, the planning commission may vote to take up their proposed proactive item submission. The discussion proceeding and motion and vote shall include at least the following: determination jurisdiction, like staff had reviewed it for jurisdiction ability, I believe. What you said, and reasons for the proactive item coming before us. But then the C, which I didn't hear much discussion about, is what level of staff involvement and monetary expense will be necessary for the proactive item to advance, and what actual staff resources, other resources are available based on staff workload and city budget. These are things to consider in choosing to vote to take up this item.
So I estimated, thank you, Dan, by the way, I really appreciate you going over our procedures. I think it's very important. And I did put in all of the elements in my proposal. I I think Jacob's already spent probably close to an entire day on this issue already because he was asked to go over the sleeping and lying laws and report on a meeting I already participated in with Rachel Berry, the police, Sean at Parks, library, and Brenda was involved, some other folks were involved. And I was asked to come just because of my interest in the subject. And so I estimated additionally 4 entire days of staff time for one experienced planner. And that would be essentially to comb through the laws, to review the laws, to present the laws that we have. And that would not only involve sleeping, camping, lying laws, but also vehicle laws, boat laws, and because we want to bring as many laws as we can potentially under this, at least think about it. And that I also thought that it's likely that that the planning department is probably going to be asked by the council to undertake this work anyway. I think the council, if we don't take this on, council I know is going to probably want to start looking at this, and I think they're going to probably go to Jacob for questions being answered like he's already done. And then that was my estimate, and I'd be happy to hear from Jacob and Jenny on what they think in that regard. And then I have a section on costs, but we can talk about staff first.
I mean, it's one thing I haven't done in code amendments is track my time specifically, you kind of work on it here, and there. But it is probably several days of work. One question is, are we amending the development code or just the municipal code itself? And if it's the development code, then there's more process and staff reports and stuff like that. And so that time increases. I think, it's hard to pinpoint a specific amount of time, but it is probably several days of work. I know when we worked on this back in 2016, when we were dealing with camping and public rights of way and on public property, so the police had a better tool to work with. It was a much more concise effort, and we worked with our legal counsel, and they took some examples from the city of Ashland, the city of Portland. This could be broader, and it's one of those things where, when you're working on amendments, it's an onion. Oh, this, and then, oh, that, oh, and then this and that, so there's that kind of thing. And so pinpoint an exact amount of days, I don't know, several, 4 might be a good estimate to start.
And I think it's sleeping, camping, and lying. That's what applies to HB. It's pretty specific. It's the type of, so I don't think the development code is going to be involved at all.
Yeah, and the only reason I bring that up, and this is something Jenny and I have talked about, is if we put homeless shelter as a use in the zoning ordinance.
Well, that would be something that we would discuss along the way. I'm not sure if that would be the way it would be phrased. I think it would be more like, I don't know what the name would be, because I don't think there's an appetite for housing people. I think there's an appetite, and nor do I think the law requires that. I do think we have to make sure that people can stay warm and dry and alive, which is what the Martin v. Boise case said. The Grants Pass case extended that quite a bit. Martin v. Boise was, people aren't going to die. You need to make sure that people can get warm and dry, and they have to be able to live. And maybe temporarily people find their way here, find their way someplace else too. But in the meantime, we're not going to say kick them out into the cold. No place to go. And these are people from outside of town. Inside of town, I'm hoping that we can have a place a little bit more. We already have places that are a little bit more permanent for those that already are here, because I think we don't have the problem here. If we had like an indigenous homeless problem, it would be evident, because we would know that there are people from in town that don't have places to live. But we're taking care of our own already. So I guess that's a long explain. But I don't think it's gonna head in that direction. I doubt it. So then budget of the budget, I think that one of our main budgetary, so two ways that I could see this costing the city. First, I think not doing it right is gonna be very costly. And so I think this is what we call an ounce of prevention. As the pound of cure that Grants Pass is going through right now is still ongoing, and the mill is keeping going, and people are not happy there. That's talking to their city attorney and what's happening down there. So the ounce of prevention is going to be, I do think that we're going to need some legal counsel and some interface with counsel about different types of solutions, and these are going to be people that are going to be specialized in the federal litigation and are going to have to, really understand the movement of the federal courts on this Eighth Amendment issue. So we're talking scholars and very top attorneys on this thing, including the attorneys that are already involved, who I understand are very talented. And maybe we get our insurance to pay for some of it, maybe not. We don't have a claim, but maybe the insurance company will help us interface. I understand that Grants Pass's attorneys have been hired by their insurance company. And so maybe our insurance, if it's the same insurance as that, would add some hours to that attorney to advise us. And so that would then, we get the benefit of that attorney's knowledge and also pay that attorney for helping us too. So there are ways that we can creatively try to save some money there. And then, so attorneys, so I don't, off the top of my head, I don't want to say too much, but I'm thinking at least $30,000 for legal work on this issue over the course of the next 6 months, maybe 20,000. I don't know, but something. It's not going to be a tiny number. But it could be 10,000, probably somewhere between 10 and 30. And then I think the other cost would be for somebody to, and I don't know who has this information, somebody probably does, but how do we start defining homelessness and what are the causes? And not everyone, it's not a one size fits all problem. How does that interact with our laws? And somebody who can provide a report that will demonstrate why our laws are objectively reasonable from the perspective of homeless people, right? I think that our perspective is everybody's, the law applies equally to everybody. And so why is that perspective something that's objectively reasonable for the homeless as well?
So I'm listening, and you're taking this definitely from an attorney's perspective, because that's your position. All I'm hearing so far is investigating the legal aspects of these laws and asking a commission who aren't attorneys to take this on. There's other things that cities can do to, I think, to help keep from getting this federal thing of showing they have services to take care of the homeless, so that they aren't putting it out into the cold, say. At the state, we've had a number of presentations from different homeless advocate groups, homeless care groups, care centers. There's a group in Eugene that they call themselves Angels or something like that, and they're not governmental, and they work closely with the homeless folks who trust them and help them get out of addiction and other things that have caused them to be homeless. And they're pretty successful in that. I've heard presentations from formerly homeless folks that are working with folks in shelters about some of the stiff laws that have impacted them. For instance, if you urinate in public in some places, Salem, for instance, it's a felony. Now you're stuck with a felony for the rest of your life for having urinated in public. And things like that. Then there was this person that had 7 felonies. He was trying to present this to us. Anyway, the point is there's you can't just be attacked by a legal perspective. I think you have to look at the human side of the situation and make sure that that's balanced so that you don't get these Grants Pass types of lawsuits. I think it's not going to be because your law is better. Make sure that they are reasonably taken care of. They have to be. Throwing that out there.
And I appreciate that thought, and I think it's a good discussion. It is a legal problem, and you could say I'm an attorney and I come from a legal perspective. The fact of the matter is that the federal judge issued a ruling invalidating city's laws. The city now has no laws, and so that is a legal problem. It's not like the laws, and the city of Grants Pass case, which I hope isn't an exemplar, hoping that will be turned over. The city of Grants Pass actually has many of the programs that you described. They have shelters, they have places to camp, they brought up all these things. And what the judge said is, I'm not going to count those. I'm basically going to disagree with all of they have huge outreach programs. In fact, one of the things that they have is to go to an attorney resource center, which is actually the attorney resource center is the resource center that brought the lawsuit against the city of Grants Pass. So the attorneys that are now suing Grants Pass and invalidated their laws, essentially, the city of Grants Pass themselves said here's another resource for you. So I do think that there is an element. I agree with you that everything should be humane, and I think our laws already are humane. If they weren't humane, they would already have been challenged as inhumane. These are laws that we all abide by. There's a different way of thinking, and that is that there's a lot more afoot than there's a lot more afoot. So I'll just say that it is a legal problem, and I don't think that the political people have the solution. I've looked at the League of Oregon Cities. They're talking about an inclusiveness thing. And I think that no matter what when you start putting programs out there for people, number one, it does attract, because human beings are smart. I'm gonna get X dollars a month from going to a city. I'm gonna go there. If I can sleep on their street, I'm gonna sleep there. And if I can do drugs here, I'm gonna do drugs there. That's where I'm gonna go. And they go from all over the country. And the problem is that the political will to deal with this problem in the way that we have in our city, we have approached the homeless issue differently. We don't have the kind of problems that our neighbors do. Our political will is different, and it's not because we haven't treated people humanely.
It's because we've expected everybody to follow the rules. And the people that aren't following the rules are charged with law violations. Humanely, we haven't done anything inhumane in this city to anyone. And the assumption that asking somebody to simply follow the law and the expectation is you get your act together. For people that can't, I'm not talking about mentally ill people that are crazy. I'm talking about people who are in charge of themselves, which is most of people. And they don't get the help they want. They decide they want to be drug addicts. That's going to be the priority of their life. What we say to those people is, if you don't have a place to live, we don't want you here. And that's how we've dealt with it politically. So politically, we don't have the problem. It's going to come to us. And looking to other jurisdictions and saying they have solutions, what I say is we are an exemplar of how this problem should be approached. And those that have taken a different approach of altruism, those people are terrified in that neighborhood. And I say this, I have 4 generations of my family here. I live here. I want to take the opportunity to do the best job I can for our citizens. And I want to use the power. We have the power and the duty as a planning commission. The duty. I'm going to remind all of us of our duty for the safety of our citizens, for the protection of our people. And we need to take this on. It's our obligation as a planning commission to look at this. It's within our jurisdiction. We must do it. We have the choice of declining it and passing it off to others. But I say we decline that and we take on the challenge. It's not an easy one, but I think the strategy is a sound one. And I'm perfectly willing to have it looked at, and we've got months to look at it and make sure we do the best job we can with it. But the problem is real. It's real.
I mean, few months, right? Isn't this gonna take effect in next 2023?
July 1, 2023, and I think we got to get it to council in time for them to look at it and do their own. I mean, I think we should get council involved to have a liaison with council on this as well, so that council is involved in somewhat of, so they are up to speed in what we're looking at, and because council ultimately is going to make the decision of whether to follow recommendations and how. And I think we need to make sure that council, so I do think we're gonna have to get it to council in enough time for them to look at it, to go through their processes and make sure that they vet what we do and make any changes they think are appropriate.
Some other commissioners want to discuss this. Discussion usually more than one person.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have any thoughts about this idea that he's brought to us?
Other than the last year I spent in Ireland, and I can stare out my office window and see the results of what Portland's policies have done, and how they don't apply their laws. I have a friend who's a Portland police officer who has been, they are told, don't enforce the laws. They're told to do that. And you look around Portland, right across the street from our office is a 2010s, a couple of broken down older homes, and you can see the drug deals going on across the street every day. I am deathly afraid that that's coming this way, and if we're not able to enforce our laws here, it will come this way.
Yeah, my office is about 2 blocks away from Russ's. Broken windows all got broken out. Locks on the doors got broken off. There's a fire starter alongside the building a couple of weeks ago. I mean, we're living with that.
And what's in front of your front door when you get there?
What's in front of my front door? You mean the
My
face
daughter
of the-
manages a restaurant, so you need to shovel it before you get going.
Yeah.
We had
No,
that
no,
occur
that's
multiple
a-
times at our office.
Yeah.
I
It's
think that's not the only problem though, because the other issue that we can't forget is, and it falls into our obligation, I believe, is if you're a predatory lawyer, you're gonna pick smallest towns, the least prepared. Closest to the problem areas, and we hit that criteria at this point, so we need to prepare ourselves.
If we're able to insulate ourselves against the House bill, we stand a good chance of being able to enforce laws that we have, which appear to have been a success to this point.
You can go right outside city limits, go Pittsburgh Road, and just camp up on the right-hand side there. Dark Creek, just camp up there with stolen cars in this homeless camp, and, I mean,
I think Dan's points are good ones, and believe me, I'd like to work on other things. And I think that if you could trust this to others, then it'd be okay, but I think that so far we've done a good job keeping good care of our people and then keeping ourselves protected. And I think that we as in St. Helens can forge a path that will enable us to continue to have a place like we want to live, like our citizens want to live in.
Yeah, it was just to be sure that we're looking at the big picture to make it effective.
I agree,
That's all.
and I think we should.
Whatever that is, you know, if it's just doing something for this House bill and blindly looking at not anything else, that wouldn't necessarily be the right thing. If that's, you know, that's enough, I think that's enough. But is there more cohesive kind of thinking about the causes of homelessness to avoid it? I mean, in my business, people want to fix a bank stabilization on their creek because it's eroding. There's this big gravel bar. They're going to take out the gravel bar and it'll be all solved. I go, no, what caused the gravel bar? So that's what you got to look at. So
There's a lot of people looking into that, but
okay, I just part of the study that we do is to make sure that we take those things into consideration. I think to make sure that the insulating laws we do work.
I agree.
Right.
That's the point, is to win.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm already scared. There's a League of Oregon Cities. They're putting on seminars for the strategies that are being forwarded by League of Oregon Cities. I've signed up for the seminar. I'm gonna go. If you subscribe to the league, I mean, I agree. We need to throw the net far and wide, get as many ideas as we can, get input from as many brilliant minds as we can put to this problem and to forge a solution that's going to be successful. I agree with you 100%. And you know, I don't necessarily have the answers. This is just a proposal as an outline to get us started, and then come back and devise something that we will win. We want to win. And I can tell you the difference between winning and losing is huge. It's a big game. Kind of it.
So the question that's in my mind is, if you want to take this on and we all vote, yeah, let's take it on, there's this monetary amount that who's going to pay for it? So
I pulled up the plan. I was looking at the planning commission budget, and I know the budget doesn't. It's a document that provides guidance, and money moves and changes and all, but yes, that's would be something when it comes to council. I think the proactive committee would need to be coming to the council and advocating, because I mean, money, we're strapped, and so if we use $30,000 and additional things for this, where does that come from? So consideration. And I know that we've got a lot going on in the city with planning and developments and some projects that are gonna be breaking ground. One of which the South First Street extension, gonna be breaking ground once Halloween Town ends, and I know a lot of, so these are just questions that I don't know how to answer, but I would I just know our staff heavily committed, and where the money comes from, well, we'd have to make that decision. So I am not speaking out against this. I think this is something for the commission to you have to decide if this is what you want to take on. I think the council would welcome guidance in this and that and the other thing, but the question is, are we able to afford the staff time and the finance, the money? So we just need to confront that.
So basically, what we laid out in our procedures is that you just get an idea what the expense would be, what the staff involvement would be, what the issue is, what we outlined, potential ways to study and investigate what involved. We really talked about that. Those are the kinds of things that the committee, if we choose to take this on, will look into and come back with a report on those things.
Correct.
Be the next time. So you don't have to have the answers today.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. That wasn't the point.
Yeah, I'd like to explore the budget though, and then come back and get a number, like an estimate of how much it would be for people.
We don't want you doing that unless we decide to go for it.
Right.
So, yeah, we want you to spend a lot of time on it. Ahead of time. Good. I'm glad you did what you did.
And sometimes the amount is what it is. I think about the earth removal case, and our legal fees for that were around 40,000. That wasn't budgeted, but it was something that happened. It was something that we had to deal with. And this may end up being like that. As far as staff time, you look around the city and who do you have that works on this stuff? Not a lot of people, right? And John is really busy, and he's extra busy because we're in between finance directors, and so that creates some chaos. I know for us, the mapping and aerial updates is largely done. There's still some cleanup on that. And, typically when we get into the winter, that's a good time for projects. I think the strategic plan was out of date before it was adopted. Just because of the nature of it, you make your best guess and then other things happen. Right now, yeah, we're pretty buried in everything. The other challenge that we have facing us is the Mercury TDML stuff. And it's year after year of state mandates, which is driving me nuts. One year it's the flood stuff, one year it's the duplex stuff. It's just year after year. It's been consecutive years where we've just been trying to keep up with state mandates. And here's another example. It's just something we have to kind of roll with the punches on. I don't know how development activity will continue. Usually, in the winter, there's kind of a lull. But yeah, it's roll with the punches. I think it's an important matter. Honestly, with the council, all the stuff going on, and John being the way things are, I think if a committee didn't take the initiative, however that's formed, God knows, all of a sudden July's here and nothing's happened. I could see that, and it's not anybody's intent, it's just the nature of St. Helens and the circus that it is.
I think the timing is problematic with change in staff, with the council,
Yeah.
change the staff, the planning commission, it's the continuity. Tough, so.
Yeah.
Just saying, in time.
But at the same time, a lot of other cities will be working on it, so there'll be examples at some point.
Yeah. Commissioner Toski and I had, how long did we talk? Was it a couple hours? Was it close to a couple hours that we talked about this? So I mean, it is an important, yeah, definitely important. I think we had a really good frank discussion about things. So it is definitely important that we need to meet it head on before it bites us in the derriere. And I think the council, probably administration would welcome any help we could get with dealing with it. So and my understanding is that this is if you chose to move ahead, it's not the whole commission that is dedicated to the work. You would have the subcommittee doing most of the grunt work, and then keeping in communication and reporting to the planning commission, and I guess eventually maybe proposing that the planning commission makes endorse the recommendations or whatever and present them to the council. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, I outlined kind of the process of the study, which I put in the proposal, and then the idea would be to, I don't think a lot of our laws will need to be changed. I think some will need to be strengthened. For example, urination law, I think that moving things out of, this is something to talk to our citizens about, because these are laws that apply to everyone. We're not making laws for the homeless, we're making laws that we all live by, and that's the point here. But having stricter laws may enable us to help with enforcement. The idea is to make sure that our laws are humane, review our laws, bring them in under the umbrella. That's the strategy. Maybe some lawyer will tell me this is completely wrong. I think I read it and it says it does, A says city or county law does not include policies developed pursuant to ORS 203.77 or 203.079. I don't think how does that get any clearer? That our laws, we bring them under policies developed and make sure they're humane. I think they're already humane. I'm sure it's going to be how complicated it's going to be. The HB 3115 part. I think the more complicated part is going to be the Martin v. Boise part. And then the study of the fallback position is what is objectively reasonable? How do we deal with that? In the event we need to use our laws, how do we give tools to our prosecuting attorneys so that they can win jury trials and we can successfully prosecute? And how do we prove in court that our laws are objectively reasonable so that if somebody does decide to sue us, we're not just making it up, that we come forward with a body of evidence and we win our court cases. And this is a legal challenge. The city will be sued. We can't exempt ourselves. We're going to be sued. And the next thing you know, we're going to be sued because somebody's going to say, I think camping in McCormick Park is an unreasonable law from the perspective of the homeless, and I'm going to look for injunctive relief to eliminate that. And then I want attorney's fees. And who knows, maybe it'll be a shakedown, maybe it'll be $5,000 a homeless, because then the attorney gets paid and the homeless gets paid. And then they dismiss the cases. Or they try to do it they're going to try and do it as a class. That's how it's going to come at us. It's going to be as a class. They're going to try and eliminate our law. But there will be a trial. Winning trials has been kind of my business. And
Used to be a campground.
what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a
There did.
campground.
And Doug Morton actually told me, thank God it was eliminated because it was becoming a big problem.
How many years ago it was?
Well, I was here.
So I'm not sure
Hopefully we keep it as simple as possible.
It's been a while.
That's ideal when we're talking about code.
Yeah, I mean, what's to say our laws already are not humane? I mean, we have one complaint about the humanity of our laws in all the time they've been enacted.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we need to move ahead,
I propose that we.
with something.
Huh?
Yeah, move ahead with something here.
How about we take on we take the planning commission decides to proactively take on and follow the let's see.
Your title.
HB 3115. Study recommendations to council. Yes, as, let's see.
It'll be more than just recommendations to council, if you're looking at council. Sure there's enough money and staff and all those things. Committee will have to work on a bunch of things. Head on.
Well, we have the power and duty to move ahead. We have the power and
Move
duty
ahead to study it, yes.
and to make recommendations to council.
Yeah.
So I guess my motion is that we agree to take on and move forward with proactive item submission, title study and recommendation to council HB 3115.
Yeah, do a second.
That's a motion, I'll second.
Very seconded.
Okay.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Right, so we will.
Anybody want to be on the committee with me? If you have another question, let me know.
The planning commission will track the proactive items on its agenda calendar as it believes is appropriate.
We have more than three, but only three can move at a time, right?
Yeah,
More than three wanted to do it.
you need 2 tables at Running Dog.
No, go ahead. Wait. Dan
Oh, I was
started.
just gonna say that, choose a committee and then, sure, get on the agenda for the meeting or whatever meeting you want to bring back the report on where you are.
I'd like to report back in October just to let people know where we are.
That'd be good.
That's what Dan just said.
Yeah.
Well,
I
it's
said
been November.
I could, it's whenever time you want to report back. I guess we should have a regular meeting. She doesn't say in here that we have to do it very next month, but
I think that.
make sure that the agenda that's on the agenda ahead of time, so there's a time for it.
Well, we always have proactive item as a default agenda item, so if anything, it's there. Just to-
I'll be liaisoning with the city and letting them know that the planning commission's voted to move forward with this. And setting up meetings with the stakeholders and then interfacing with Jacob on a timeline to go, when we can get those laws, which he's already got a lot of. But talking about kind of getting things lined up.
Wants to be on the committee. Or who wants to be on the committee?
I can't do anything till after next month's meeting, but I'll, and past that, I can definitely talk to it.
Great, good, all right. Got it. I want a retired guy on the committee because we can have some time and how long? When are you retired?
Because I'm gone 2/3 of December and then the first 2 weeks in January.
Well, that's all right. We got a lot of work to do between now and then, so.
I'm going out to enjoy every time.
It's lovely.
All right, some of that work will be done on the fishing boat.
I think we're done. Did you want a quick summary, Jenny, of what's happening with the project, just for information items, unless you don't want to.
No, I mean, I think there's not a whole lot of update, other than we're moving to 90%. We're getting
Really
down
cool design stuff.
down to the nitty gritty with the railing and the lighting and the paving and the, it's getting very detailed. Yeah, it's exciting.
I'm listening in on the TAC meeting, but I'm not a decider, so. Say.